The man in the breadline. He had been standing in the cold since before sunrise. Thomas Hale pulled his coat tighter, though coat was generous. It was more of a worn fragment of wool, held together by stubborn stitches and hope. The line in front of him stretched around the block, a silent procession of men just like him. Men who once had jobs, homes, families counting on them. Now, they waited for a bowl of thin soup. A year earlier, Thomas had been a machinist, making $32 a week. Good money for a steady pair of hands. But when the factory closed, the owner didn't even come down to the shop floor. A foreman slipped a piece of paper under the door that read, "Closed until further notice." That notice never came. As the line crept forward, Thomas stared at the empty windows across the street, stores with no customers, buildings with "for rent" signs fading in the wind. It all felt unreal. How could a country that once promised endless opportunity collapse so suddenly? This is the story of what happened, not just to Thomas, but to an entire world. To understand the Great Depression, you have to imagine America in the 1920s. It was loud, it was fast, it felt unstoppable. Factories hummed, radios crackled in living rooms, automobiles flooded the streets, and on Wall Street, fortunes were made in hours. Ordinary people, teachers, farmers, housewives, began pouring their savings into the stock market, believing it could only go up. Banks encouraged it, newspapers celebrated it, politicians praised it, but beneath the glitter was rot. Stocks were overpriced by more than 300%. Banks made reckless loans, and millions of people were buying on margin, gambling with borrowed money. Then came October 24th, 1929, a day known as Black Thursday. A few nervous investors began to sell, then more, and soon, panic spread through the trading floors like wildfire. By October 29th, Black Tuesday, the market collapsed completely. People watched their life savings disappear in a matter of hours. Some collapsed to their knees. Some screamed. Some simply walked out of the building and disappeared into the streets of Manhattan, unable to face what they'd lost. But the stock market crash wasn't the Great Depression. It was only the spark, and what was to happen next, nobody could have prepared for. Across the country, people rushed to their banks to withdraw any money they had left. But there was a problem. The banks didn't have it. They had loaned it recklessly to investors, corporations, and stock speculators. When those loans failed, the banks began to collapse. Between 1929 and 1933, over 9,000 banks failed. Imagine waking up one morning, walking to your bank, and seeing a sign that simply read, "Bank closed. No funds available. Your life savings gone. Your mortgage gone. Your ability to buy food tomorrow gone." There was no federal insurance, no protections, nothing to stop the wave of panic erupting throughout the country. The American financial system simply crumbled. The effects rippled through every corner of life. Factories shut down, businesses boarded up, construction sites went silent, unemployment soared to 25%. In some industrial cities, it reached 50%. Half the country out of work. Men wandered the streets from dawn to dusk, looking for any job, any wage. They became known as hobos, riding trains from town to town, chasing rumors of work. Families were evicted. Homes were reduced to piles of furniture on sidewalks. Makeshift shantytowns, called Hoovervilles, sprang up across the nation, named in bitter mockery of President Herbert Hoover. In the winter cold, people wrapped themselves in old newspapers for warmth. They called them Hoover blankets. Children fainted in school from hunger. Starvation wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, slow, a creeping weakness that became normal. And yet, America wasn't alone. The Depression didn't stop at America's borders. The crash destroyed global trade. Banks in Europe collapsed. Factories closed in Asia and South America. Unemployment spread like a shadow across the world. In Germany, the economic chaos fueled anger, desperation, and resentment. This environment created fertile ground for extremist movements. Within a few years, it helped elevate a man named Adolf Hitler. In Britain, millions struggled to afford coal, food, and rent. Across Latin America, collapsing export prices pushed entire nations into crisis. The Great Depression wasn't just an American tragedy, it was a global breaking point, reshaping politics, society, and the future of nations. Despite everything, people adapted. Neighbors shared food, communities ran soup kitchens, women made clothes from flour sacks, children collected scrap metal to sell, farmers bartered eggs or vegetables when money meant nothing. Radios became lifelines, broadcasting music, stories, and President Franklin Roosevelt's calming fireside chats. His voice, steady and reassuring, gave people hope that things could improve, and slowly they did. The New Deal brought public works jobs, bank protections, and social safety nets. It didn't end the Depression, but it stopped the freefall. True recovery came only with the massive industrial mobilization of World War II. But the scars remained. When the Great Depression finally ended, America was transformed. It learned painful lessons about greed, inequality, and the fragility of financial systems. It redefined the relationship between government and the people, and it forged a generation of Americans who knew how to survive hardship with grit, quiet dignity, and determination. For people like Thomas Hale, the man in that chilly breadline, the Depression wasn't a chapter in a textbook. It was life. It was struggle. It was the long, uncertain walk through a decade of darkness, hoping the world would one day feel normal again. And when we look back today, we're reminded of just how quickly a society can rise and how suddenly it can fall. History doesn't repeat itself, they say, but it does whisper. If you enjoyed tonight's dive into history, go ahead and subscribe. It's free, it helps the channel grow, and it lets me keep telling these stories from the darker corners of the past. And hey, before you disappear into the YouTube void like a stockbroker in 1929, hit that like button too. It really does make a difference. Drop a comment if there's another chapter of history you want me to uncover. And if you're feeling adventurous, ring the bell. Don't worry, it won't trigger another Great Depression. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter of the past.